You know something? You're perfect.
Oh,
And you know something? We started about 5 seconds ago.
okay. So there we are.
Okay. Very good to be here with William Wade today. And we're going to talk about a number of things, about a diversity of ideas, and getting stepped on, stepped over, stepped through, about Terence McKenna, Alan Watt, and other people who seem to be coming back into fashion. Why do you think that's the case?
Good question. I think there's a buildup of energy with people right at this point. I mean, there's so many things happening. Either people are moving towards a dystopian sense of the world or a utopian sense. So we have the media and the powers that be trying to feed us a lot of negativity in order to keep the fear energy up high. And then there's other people that are saying, hey, wait a minute, there might be some good things going on in the world also.
It's interesting with social media as well. I'm wondering if social media is giving some of those people who died some time ago, in a sense, a new audience, because people are discovering them on YouTube, on blogs, elsewhere. And so there's a whole generation, there's probably a gap between where, in a sense, they were almost forgotten, or very few people knew about them, where now, with social media, they seem to have a new kind of life.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, particularly Terence McKenna. He's become an icon for a lot of people. And he had, one of his statements was, find the others. And this was back at a time when the social situation was such that if you were a drug user of any kind, you had to keep kind of under the covers. And this was part of his idea. And while he was around, he did a lot of touring and talking to people. And there's an incredible group of people, many people who have heard about him from generations ago. He died, what, 2001?
Something like that, yes.
And now there's probably over 200 videos online of him, along with Timothy Leary and many people from the 60s that were influential then. And there seems to be kind of a return to some of that kind of thinking.
Kind of a renaissance of the 1960s in a high-tech age.
Mm-hmm.
So they had things to say, you think, that maybe was ahead of their time? And if this
oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, Timothy Leary was given the first personal computer.
Right.
So what does that say?
Sure.
This crazy man supposedly was probably 30 or 40 years ahead of his time.
Right. I was mentioning Sam Harris's book, Waking Up. And he's got a couple of chapters which are interesting, particularly on meditation.
Yeah, you gave me the...
Yeah,
I read those.
Yeah. And I thought it was kind of interesting, his view. There were kind of two ways to an alternative reality. One was through meditation, the other through psychedelics, as a way to understand that the kind of template we have for accepting reality and understanding and processing it can be altered through techniques.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would want to add travel as a major way of opening up awareness. Psychotherapy isn't bad if you have a good therapist.
Sure.
Love is a good one.
Yeah.
Near death is also a very good one. So there's anything that disrupts the sense of self, that continuous sense of, well, I'm here and I know who I am and I know what I'm doing. When that gets disrupted, then the whole system opens up and it becomes potential to learn something new about yourself.
Right.
As long as I know who I am, I'm essentially going to be unconscious.
When you stop being skeptical and lose a sense of doubt and wonder.
Yeah.
you're basically lost on automatic pilot.
Yeah. It's an interesting one looking at culture, because culture in a way is the attempt to find tools and techniques for people to get on it. So we know who we are, we're consistent, we're secure, I have my 401k and X amount of Social Security and blah, 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 and all of those things just continually filter in my awareness so that I become more asleep.
You know, I think another way, and I don't recall this with Terence McKenna or Alan Waite or the others, although Alan Waite may... Watt, sorry. Alan Watt.
I'm the Waite.
You're the Waite, the Watt.
Yeah.
Alan Watt was English and lived in California.
Yeah.
But how the expat experience, in a way, questions the whole sense of self and identity.
Yeah.
Is that you start to see that this consciousness is very much manufactured by the culture in which you were raised and schooled and educated, your friends and your neighbors, the people around you, you're immersed in it.
Mm-hmm.
And once you're outside of that and you're trying to understand and participate in another culture, it causes you to see things in a quite different perspective.
Right. As all of us that have traveled to any other country and spent time there, we've all had culture shock,
Right.
which is an interesting idea, and it's basically that I'm coming up against a set of realities that don't fit mine.
Sure.
So I go into some kind of shock and denial, and if I stay open, then there's I don't even think there's a thing called culture shock. There's cultural interest and
Sure.
new experience, but it's like the rigidification to keep a sense of continuity that creates a lot of negative feelings inside, and culture shock being one of them.
You know, I think it's interesting as well. I think there is a distinction between a traveler, and there are people who travel frequently, and then expats, people who travel to a place and stay there for a long enough period in which they are familiar with the history, customs, traditions, rituals, language of the place, and think about that, study that, and live that, as opposed to going and doing touristy kind of things, which is what I think a lot of people do who travel. You know, if you go to Paris for 10 days, you're not going to learn French, and you're not going to really be in a lot of people's homes. You're going to go to the museums and the other tourist attractions.
Right. So you're kind of in the tourist jet stream.
Exactly.
And I think I'd say it would probably take 3 months or so being someplace, and probably in one spot to gradually get into the culture in a way where it becomes a change factor for you. Of course, there's probably people that go to a place and for a day and totally changes their life. But for most people that I've talked to about it, at least, they say about 3 months.
It's interesting. You know, it's being a writer, I'm interested in other writers who've done things such as setting up a life experience in another place. You know, particularly Henry Miller, who did this 7 years in Paris in the 1930s, and George Orwell, who did it in Burma and in Spain. And their experiences, I think, were guiding ones for me in terms of how the world opened up for them, having immersed in another culture.
Yeah.
And there are other writers, like you take someone like Charles Bukowski, who has an absolute, utter honesty about his life and who he was, without the usual defenses and shields that people have to protect themselves. He was just simply, this is who I am. You know? So he didn't need to go to another place to, in a sense, find a deeper reality about himself and about the people around him. So it isn't as if the only way you can write or grow is to become an expat. I think there are lots of ways to do that,
Oh,
but I think
absolutely.
to be an expat, if you're open to that experience, is one of the ways. And
Mhm.
I think we've probably both known people who've been here 30 years, and that's an expat length of time, but in some ways they've been here 1 year 30 times.
Yes.
They haven't really grown in the place. Their friends are people from their original culture and their original language group, etc. And the way they live, they could be anywhere.
Sure. Yeah, I think of in my own traveling, sitting beside various people on the plane, particularly business people that travel a lot,
Yeah.
and going from one holiday into the other to the other to the other, and essentially not having a multicultural experience,
Sure.
but rather having that business stream. There's the tourist stream, jet stream, business stream. And, that's a real interesting one.
And it's a very good point, because I think when you're being aware of what you're doing, part of that awareness is, are you so narrowly focused on an objective?
Mhm.
In other words, I'm going to Paris or I'm going to London for a meeting, and that's the whole preoccupation, and everything else is filtered out.
Right.
You've traveled physically, but emotionally and psychologically, you're in the same place as the place you left.
Yes. Yeah, it's almost, that would be a definition of all of us to a degree, and to the amount of flexibility that we have, or the amount of interest, or the amount of excitement that we have in our own personal life.
Sure.
We'll have more flexibility.
Mm.
But there's always that need for continuity that we all have. I mean, it's built into the organism. I need to know who I am